play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock? Well, okay. Not live from Little Rock. It's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for joining us. Whether you're listening on the radio on Saturday at 1 o'clock on 99.5 FM, or if you're listening on Sunday at 5 o'clock on 96.5 FM, or if you're listening via the delayed version on podcast or on Krypton Radio, kryptonradio.com is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. Thanks so much for joining us. We got a great show today. As usual, as I mentioned, this is not live this week. This show is 99.9% live. This week, however, it is pre-recorded, mainly due to the schedule of my guest, Russ Morrissey of E.N. World, who lives in the United Kingdom. So we actually recorded almost a 2-hour interview about a week ago. In fact, it was last Saturday. This will broadcast for the first time on Saturday, the following Saturday. And I've edited it down for the radio show. Now, listen, I always mention show notes. Go to the show notes for today's show at shaneplays.com. That's ShanePlays.com. And there will be an extended podcast version of the show, or not of the show, but of the interview. So if you want to hear the full interview with Russ Morrissey, you can do that. Go to the show notes at shaneplays.com, and you'll find it there. And what we're going to be talking about today is Russ, of course, is with E.N. World, enworld.org, and that is a tabletop role-playing game news site and forums, very popular, been around for quite some time. And I've also forthcoming, it won't be on the show notes this weekend, but if you subscribe to the podcast via iTunes or Google Play Music or Stitcher or other fine podcast directories, or if you follow me on YouTube, all those things are linked at shaneplays.com. Within the next week or two, I'll also have an interview with Morris about E.N. World and the Ennies, which are basically the Oscars of role-playing games. But this week, the interview with Morris or Russ Morrissey, he's known as Morris on Twitter, is going to be talking about W.O.I.N. You'll hear more about that from Morris later, or I want to keep saying Morris. Russ Morrissey, I know him as Morris from Twitter, but he's got a game, and it's W.O.I.N, W-O-I-N, is the role-playing game. And then it's got 3 sub settings, if you will: new, which is for sci-fi; old, which is for basically high fantasy, medieval high fantasy; and then now, which is sort of 80s action kind of genre. So we'll be talking about that more later. First, I want to remind folks, as I've already mentioned, you can go to shaneplays.com. There's always show notes there for the show. The show will go out as a podcast within a few days of going out on the air. And temporarily, we do have a station change. So if you're listening on 99.5 Faith Talk and you're like, why the heck is Shane Plays Radio on my 99.5 Faith Talk? Well, I'm normally on 96.5 FM The Answer, which is a sister station to 99.5 Faith Talk. So just temporarily, for a few weeks during football season, my show normally goes at 1 o'clock on Saturdays on 96.5. For a few weeks, I think till mid-November, I'm on 1 o'clock on Saturdays on 99.5, normally live. And then on Sundays, the show is repeated at 5 o'clock on 96.5 FM The Answer, following Sean Hannity. And then it goes out as a podcast in a week delayed on Krypton Radio. So all that being said, I want to, again, go to enworld.org, O-R-G, and learn more about E.N. World. If you don't already know, it's a great resource for tabletop role-playing games. Had a great discussion with Russ Morrissey about the history of E.N. World and the Ennies, the awards that are at Gen Con. And I will release that in podcast form within the next couple of weeks. But for this week, you're going to hear an abbreviated version of the interview where we talked about his what's old is new W.O.I.N W.O.I.N gaming system, RPG gaming system, tabletop RPG gaming system with its new, old, and now subsettings. And then, go to the show notes, shaneplays.com, and you can access a podcast that has the full interview. So, with no further ado, we're going to get into talking with Russ Morrissey of Ian World fame, but talking about his newly released game, W.O.I.N. What's old is new. Thanks so much for listening. So, we've talked about Ian World and, the innies and all that cool stuff you do and what's involved there. Which brings us to, you've gone from basically reporting on and supporting the community of tabletop role-playing games to you've, within the past couple of years, decided to publish your own game, which is What's Old is New, or W.O.I.N. And people can go to WOINRPG.com, WOINRPG.com, and learn more about the game and download free sample chapters and learn where you can, buy the full game and that sort of thing. And it looks really high quality from what I've seen of it. So, with this new venture that you did, were you looking to fill a void in tabletop RPGs that you thought was lacking, or did you want to see what it would be like just to design and publish a game after talking about them so long and playing them so long?
I would say a bit of both. So my original plan was to write a science fiction role-playing game, and that was inspired because I'd recently sort of revisited the 80s and rebought tons of sort of games and toys and all sorts of stuff that I'd loved in the 80s. One of those things was perhaps a Star Trek role-playing game. It didn't quite cut the mustard for me all these years later, after I've seen more modern games. That's essentially what I wanted to do. So what I started doing was writing my own sci-fi role-playing game, which incorporated some of the concepts, like the life path system that Star Trek game had, which Traveller sort of uses too, and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay used at the time, things like that. Other games in the 80s all did this.
Now, in Traveller, character creation was a mini game. You could literally die during character creation.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Yep. Yeah, so you can't in this game.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, it is safe to generate a character. So yeah, and then the concept just expanded into an idea of writing two games. It was going to be a science fiction one and a fantasy one. Partly because I wanted my science fiction characters to be able to visit medieval worlds, especially if you were playing a sort of Star Trek style game or something like that. And then the whole concept just expanded into two independent standalone games, which were fully compatible with each other. So one science fiction, one fantasy. And then the third game, which was modern action role-playing, was suggested to me by a chap called Mike Myler. I don't know if you know him.
Only from researching your games, I see that he was basically the writer of Now.
But he approached me and suggested to me that I could write a third game, which was sort of modern action, including sort of talking cars and kung fu and all that sort of 80s action TV show stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, I could, but I've just committed myself to writing two complete games. I really, really can't write a third one. And he said, well, I'll do it. So he wrote the third one, which hasn't yet been published, but he's written the third one, which is the modern action version of the rule set. And so now we have three completely standalone games. One of them is, sort of far future science fiction. One of them is medieval fantasy. And the other one is sort of 80s to present day action. And the three of them are completely compatible, so you can take your Starship captain and land him in the middle of a wizard's lair while James Bond turns up, all that sort of stuff. You can mix them all up. It's all completely 100% compatible.
So the Federation can teleport Kit and Michael Knight up from Knight Rider.
Yeah, essentially.
I love it. Yeah, and I was surprised. I knew about old and new. So just so people know that you've got What's Old is New. That's the game system.
That's the underlying game system that powers all things. Yeah.
And then you have new, that is the science fiction. Then you have old, which is the medieval fantasy, and then you have Now, which is the sort of 80s over-the-top cinematic adventures.
That's the one. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
When will Now be available to the greedy public?
Not for a while yet. We basically got a draft at the moment, so we're talking mid next year. So new is out already. Old is coming very, very soon, and then Now will be probably mid next year.
And the rules system, when you say old is coming very, very soon, people could still homebrew medieval fantasy. They just, they just won't have a official core rule book, because the core. I'll try not to confuse people. You have
Spanish people all the time. It's fine.
Yeah, well, you have fantasy core, and then you have it's not
Yeah.
sci-fi core. What's the other one?
Future core.
Future core, and they're the same basic core rule book, but the flavor and play examples and everything are tailored to the setting. So you could feasibly get new and still run a fantasy setting, but you'd have to homebrew it, right?
So. Well, not really. Most of the old rules are out there. So I came up with this kind of concept where, say you'd bought the new hardcover book, and all you wanted to do was give your your Jedi Knight, not that it has Jedi Knights in it, but your far future character,
your far future warrior monk.
Star Knight is the
Star Knight.
Okay. And you want to give him a broadsword and some plate armor, or you just want to have some magic, or you just want to have elements of the fantasy stuff without having to buy an entire separate hardcover book for sort of like $30 or $40 or whatever it comes to. You can buy bits of it instead. So what I've done is, as each chapter of New and each chapter of Old was completed and finished with layout and stuff like that, each one was released separately online as a softcover and PDF. So you can buy future careers, future core, future equipment, future space, and things like that individually, which are basically chapters of New. You can buy them individually as small softcover books. So what that means is, if you've got one hardcover, you can buy whichever bits of another game you want without having to buy the entire core rules again, and basically duplicating, spending money on stuff you've pretty much already got under a different guise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's what a marketing would probably call, it's modular or hot swappable.
Sure.
So yeah. So basically, like I said, you could play futuristic sci-fi, medieval fantasy, medieval high fantasy, as it were, and then modern 80s over the top, kick the Terminator in the face. But what this game is not, based on interviews I've read with you, and then also your description of the game online, it's not open to the level of like GURPS, right? It seems like I've heard you say and try to stress that, they're not getting GURPS or Savage Worlds here.
Yeah. For example, GURPS and Savage Worlds are pretty much designed to cover a very, very broad range of genres. I don't think What's Old is New could, for example, handle superheroes very well, and it doesn't try to. Superheroes weren't even part of what I was thinking about when I designed them. So, you can't really bring Superman into it very well at all. I think what I've tried to do is take those three genres and just make sure it does those three specific things as well as I can possibly make it do without worrying about anything else. So it does sci-fi, it does medieval fantasy, and it does sort of 80s action as best I can do those three specific things.
In a way that your characters are compatible across all three.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess mechanics-wise, you describe it as pretty crunchy. I think you gave one example of a game that you said would be an 8 on a 1 to 10 of crunchiness scale. And
Did I?
Yeah, there's some interview I read, and then you said you gave an example of a game, and you said that'd be like an 8 on crunchy. And then you said, that being the case, W.O.I.N is like a 6 or a 7. So it's above average crunchy, but not crunchy to the level of, say, GURPS is kind of how I'm taking it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as crunchy even as Pathfinder, I'd say, but it is crunchier than, say, I don't know, Fate or a lot of the sort of rules light games out there. So it's
Right.
mid it's mid crunchy.
Right, but you definitely don't describe it as rules light.
No. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one of those things you can drill down into. So, for example, there's a Starship construction manual,
Yeah.
which you can use or you can not use. And if you choose to use it, you can spend ages tweaking a Starship down to which warp engines you're using or which power plant you're using or which way you're mounting your weapon, all this sort of stuff, and working out the exact speed of it and all these sorts of things. Or you can not bother doing all that. You can just, buy a ship, have its stats right there for you. And when you come to actually use it in play, it's nowhere near as complex. It's kind of like the behind the scenes stuff that you can dive into if you want, but you don't have to.
So let me ask you this. There's one glaring rules mechanic, and every system, no matter how well done, is going to have rules mechanics that, you're like, oh, maybe I could have done that differently. But
Right.
just for an example, and I'm not trying to beat up on D&D, but just as an example, the grappling mechanic in D&D 5th edition is basically, in my opinion, pointless.
Right.
And there's no, you can't, D&D at different times has had versions of called shots and this and that and the other, but it doesn't really have that now. So with your system, can you get a little bit more specific? Like, I want to shoot him in the knee, and
yes, you can. The way you do that is you buy specific exploits. So you could choose to spend experience points on, I don't know, a pile driver. Is that wrestling move where you someone's head in? That's what I called it in the book, so I hope so.
Yeah, well, that's where you basically turn somebody upside down and take them head first into the mat. Yeah.
So you buy specific maneuvers that you can do. You spend XP on them, and then you might have the ability to, I don't know, do a double tap, which is obviously when you shoot someone twice very quickly.
Yeah.
Or you could do the pile driver, or you could do a trip, or you could do a charge, or you could do death from above, which is when you leap down on someone from a height. Or there's like dozens of exploits which you can choose a specific thing you want to do. So yes, in answer to your question, yeah, you can do that, and you do that by purchasing the exploit, and that being one of the tricks that you know how to do.
So is it one of those systems where anybody can attempt anything at a penalty, or you have to have the exploit in order to try?
Generally, you have to have the exploit to get the specific effect, although you can describe a regular attack in any way you wish.
So, are there any like pet RPG mechanics or mechanics that you've always been like, man, why don't RPGs do this? that you made sure to get into your system here? Can you have any examples of that?
There is one thing that I definitely had going in was that when you're sitting around a D&D game or many games, and you've sort of been playing for sort of 6 months with a group of characters, and then one of the other guys goes, "Yeah, I've got a 16 charisma." Like, how did I not know that?
Right.
These attributes are not that clear, if that makes sense, unless someone goes out of their way to tell you. So what I decided to do is to put into the actual core, bake into the core rules, was that if you have high or low attributes, they are noticeable, and they form part of what's called a descriptor, which introduces your character at the top of your character sheet. So if you have a really high agility, for example, your character might be described as nimble. Or if you have a really low agility, it might be described as clumsy or stuff in a descriptor across the top, so that you can instantly summarize to someone else what your character is in one sentence. And they've got a basic idea of what career, what race, what your high attributes are, what your low attributes are, all just in one sort of elegant, quick sentence.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm not saying it's the same thing exactly, but the Cypher system from Monte Cook Games does something similar, where they have, I am a adjective, noun, that verb.
Yeah.
So you get a pretty quick idea right off the bat.
Yeah, and so when you start a game session, just each person just reads out their descriptor straight away, and everyone just knows exactly who they're playing with then.
Yeah, I like that. So Now, does W.O.I.N use levels, classes? I mean, kind of what? I guess what did you keep from traditional previous role-playing games that maybe made it in, or didn't? Or did you say, I think the level system is stupid and get rid of it? Or, what, what kind of approach did you take there? I'm going to go ahead and take us to a break. We'll be back with more of Russ Morrissey and his W.O.I.N, What's Old is New role-playing game system after this short break. As a reminder, this is a pre-recorded show this week, so if you're listening on Saturday on 99.5, this is pre-recorded even though the show is normally live at 1 o'clock on Saturdays. And as a reminder, for a few weeks, so about mid-November, on Saturdays, we're on 99.5 Faith Talk at our normal time of Saturdays at 1 o'clock. And then on Sundays, we'll repeat at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on our normal station of 96.5 FM, The Answer, their sister station. So just a temporary station change for a few weeks due to football. If you're on 99.5 FM and you're like, whoa, what the heck is this? It's temporary. We'd love to have you. So come along for the ride. And maybe when we go back to 96.5 FM, The Answer, in mid-November, you'll come with us. But regardless, hope you're enjoying what you're hearing. And we'll be back soon with more Shane Plays, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. Thanks for listening. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate Battle of the Galaxies. Grab your slot today for the only online game where tactics and strategy still reign supreme. Visit Megawars.net and get options only available in our special pre-sales previews running now. Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays. Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. As a reminder, this is a temporary station change, so if you're just now tuning in, and normally, we're not on 99.5 on Saturdays at this time. We're normally on our sister station, 96.5 FM, The Answer on Saturdays. This is temporary till about mid-November. So if you're like, what the heck is this? Hope you come along for the ride, but this is just a temporary station change. And now back to the show with Russ Morrissey and his tabletop role-playing game W.O.I.N. What's old is...
It doesn't have a level system in the sense that D&D has one. It's a life path system. So when you create a character, you choose a number of careers which you take sequentially on top of each other. You take 5 as a default. So you might start off as like an urchin, and then become a cut person, then become a burglar, and then become a assassin, and then go to prison or something. Right. So there's your 5 careers. Yep. Each of those 5 careers basically forms your character's background, and each one grants you attribute bonuses, skills, and exploits one at a time. So at the end, when you've taken those 5 careers, you've got a complete set of attributes, a complete set of skills, and a complete set of exploits which describes your character. And then over the course of play, you can spend experience points on attribute increases, on skill increases, on new exploits, or on new careers, which give you the whole sort of bundle again. I'm not sure I'm explaining that well at all.
No, I think that does make sense. Yeah, and it's also, so it sounds to me that this is a system where your experience points is how you spend them to improve your character over time.
Yeah, so it's more granular than than D&D is in that sense, because you tweak little bits of your character in the ways you want to, or you can sort of take bundles, packages which are careers, and just say, right, I'm taking the burglar career. Now I get +1 to my agility, and I get this exploit, and I get this +2 to my this, and
how does one gain experience in this game?
So that's the fairly standard way of doing it, I suppose. Overcoming challenges, defeating creatures, the usual sort of D&D-esque model. What happens is whenever you overcome a challenge of some kind, the GM decides how difficult you clearly found that challenge, and assigns you a number of XP based on that. So if you found it really trivial, you don't get anything. Okay. If it was an arduous effort, then you might get, quite a bundle of XP to spend on skills and attributes or new careers or whatever you want to spend it on.
So in D&D, in GURPS, for example, I've been getting more and more familiar with GURPS over the past couple of years. I quite enjoy it. The XP is like almost completely at the discretion of the game master. Whereas in like D&D, it's
codified.
Yeah, it's codified. That's the exact word I had. So is it in W.O.I.N, is there any codification, or is it like it's like
halfway, it's about halfway between the two. So what happens is, for a standard task, you'll get a number of XP exactly equal to your grade, which is the number of careers you've taken.
Okay.
And in order to gain a new career, you generally need to do that 10 times. So the number of XP is to get the next career is basically equal to 10 times the career number it is. I honestly promise you, it is explained much more clearly in text than the way I'm doing it right now.
If it helps any, it makes sense. So it's halfway in between. It's like the DM or the GM, the game master, will assign this task is this difficulty, but knowing what that difficulty is, that's a standard amount of XP.
For a standard amount. If it's really difficult, you get twice the amount. If it's easy, you get half the amount. Okay. If it's trivial, you get nothing.
So on the question of role playing, ROLL, versus role playing, ROLE, a lot of games these days are designing game mechanics in to encourage role playing. For example, D&D has the flaws and that sort of thing where you'll get inspiration for playing your flaws to encourage that sort of thing. Did you kind of bake anything in to encourage ROLE playing, or is that even a concern for you? Or
yeah, so you remember I mentioned that descriptor earlier?
Yeah.
Part of it, and you commented that it was similar to the SciFi system, and it is in this aspect, in that so your descriptor might read, I'm a young, nimble, human burglar who, and then you have a role-playing descriptor on the end of that, so it might be who believes in fairy tales, or who worships ancient gods, or who cannot tell a lie, or something like that.
Who designs role-playing games?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So something that's a really evident characteristic about you. So that the first thing that someone spends 5 minutes talking to you, the impression they've got when they walk away is that guy who whatever. So it's a really obvious, evident role-playing based characteristic you possess.
Right.
And what happens is you get rewarded every time you use that characteristic.
Okay.
Is the way it works. And usually you get rewarded when you use it to your disadvantage.
Right. Yeah, and then a lot of games do that, because if you're always using it to your advantage, you may be role playing, but you're also trying to game the system a little bit. So, okay, well that's cool. So it sounds like you've got some stuff, in there to, and you mentioned from a ROLL playing perspective that it's pretty tactical.
The
right?
combat system is,
Yeah. So do you want to, talk maybe a little bit about the combat system and what's crunchy about it? And then this is a dice pool system.
Yes,
now,
it is.
It's not W.O.I.N Games dice pool system, but it does use D6s. Is that correct?
It does, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So why don't you speak a little bit about the dice pool system? Why you went with that? Why you felt that was a good way to go? And I'm not implying that's bad. I'm just, love to hear your thoughts as a designer. And then, maybe talk a little bit about the combat system.
Okay, so the dice pool system is you form a dice when you want to accomplish a task which the GM has adjudicated is not an automatic success. So, it doesn't make you roll to sit down on a chair, but you might make you roll to pick the chair up.
Right.
Depending on how heavy it is. The dice pool system is composed of 3 elements. You take your attribute, which will give you a number of dice. You take a skill, if you have a relevant skill, and you take any relevant equipment. Add those together into a dice pool, then roll the dice. So, for example, if you were wanting to break into a house and you wanted to climb up to the window, the GM might say to you, right, that's going to be a agility check you need to make. So you look at your agility and you say, right, that gives me 3d6, and I've got the climbing skill, which gives me 1d6, and I've got this climbing equipment, this high-quality climbing equipment, which gives me another d6. So that's, I've forgotten what I said now, 3, 4, 5, I think. That's 5d6 I'm rolling. So then you roll your 5d6 and you try to beat the target number assigned by the GM for the task. So that's the basic core of the dice. It's very simple. It's not.
Yeah, I like it. Well, do you have the concept of critical successes or failures?
Yeah. So when you roll your dice pool, if you roll 3 6s, you've got a critical success. So the more dice you're rolling, the more likely you're to roll 3 6s. If you're only rolling 3 dice, you're not likely to roll it. When that happens, depending on the situation, like in combat, there's some very specific things that happen with a critical success. In other situations, the GM might have to come up with, a great way that you accomplished what just happened. So say you're trying to hack into the system of a baddie spaceship,
right,
and you roll a critical success. Instead of just managing to get into the system where you're able to lower their shields, with a critical success, you suddenly realise you've got into the system where you can completely control the whole ship, perhaps. So that's what a sort of critical success would look like.
All right. How about a critical failure?
There are no critical failures because that's quite hard to do with a dice pool system. I couldn't work out. I did think about it, but I just couldn't work out a really elegant way to do it.
Yeah.
Like the more dice, in some ways, I roll 3 1s. That means the more dice I'm rolling, the more likely I am to have a critical failure. That doesn't work. No, there are no critical failures in the game.
Okay. All right. So only levels of success, or just either you pass, fail, or you have a very good pass.
Success,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. So combat-wise, especially for the sci-fi and the 80s action, okay, one of the things that I liked about D20 for like D20 Urban and like the D20 Star Wars system was that they kind of altered how the hit points worked, because if you've got these high energy weapons or these explosives flying around, the hit point system kind of stops making sense. So they gave you vitality points, which were I'm dodging out of the way at the last second, or, it glanced my shoulder kind of thing. And then once you got tired and ran out of vitality points, it went directly to your hit points. So did you take anything like that into account with what's old is new, or how does kind of the hit point system work, if there is one?
There is. So there's a core hit point system called health, which is the standard. A weapon hits you, it does 2d6 plus 2 damage. You take that off your health. When you reach 0, you fall unconscious. The usual. Alongside that runs a number of status tracks. Some of them are emotional, like fear and confusion and things like that. Some of them are physical, like bleeding and on fire and things like that. And you can move down.
You have a track called On Fire. I love it.
Yeah. Well, called Fire.
Wow, I've got to play this game where being on
when you're
fire...
playing a fantasy game, how often do people throw fireballs around?
Pretty often. Let's be honest. Pretty often. Yeah, pretty often.
Yeah. So you can move down these tracks to sort of mild, moderate, and severe conditions, which have increasingly dramatic effects on what you can do and how they affect you. So there's some sort of very specific kind of tracks. There's like 10 or 12 different tracks in total, covering a range of different effects.
Interesting.
And finally, when you are hit by something, you can spend luck dice to sort of negate the damage you just received. I used to do that whole James Bond thing where he gets hit by a bullet and his cigar case.
Exactly. Yeah. That and that was kind of the vitality points thing that D20 did. Yeah.
Yeah. So in W.O.I.N you would just spend some luck to negate the damage.
Gotcha. So when you say that it's tactical, what do you? I mean, does that mean we're grid-based, turn-based combat with like maybe action points? I know that you said it was somewhat inspired by XCOM. I'm going to go ahead and take us to a break. We'll be back with more of Russ Morrissey and his W.O.I.N What's Old is New role-playing game system after this short break. As a reminder, this is a pre-recorded show this week, so if you're listening on Saturday on 99.5, this is pre-recorded even though the show is normally live at 1 o'clock on Saturdays. And as a reminder, for a few weeks, so about mid-November, on Saturdays, we're on 99.5 Faith Talk at our normal time of Saturdays at 1 o'clock. And then on Sundays, we'll repeat at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on our normal station of 96.5 FM, The Answer, their sister station. So just a temporary station change for a few weeks due to football. If you're on 99.5 FM and you're like, whoa, what the heck is this? It's temporary. We'd love to have you. So come along for the ride. And maybe when we go back to 96.5 FM, The Answer, in mid-November, you'll come with us. But regardless, hope you're enjoying what you're hearing. And we'll be back soon with more Shane Plays, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. And now it's time to give a little love to one of our sponsors. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate Battle of the Galaxies. Grab your slot today for the only online game where tactics and strategy still reign supreme. Visit megawars.net and get options only available in our special pre-sales previews running now. Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays. Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. As a reminder, this is a temporary station change, so if you're just now tuning in, and normally, we're not on 99.5 on Saturdays at this time. We're normally on our sister station, 96.5 FM, The Answer on Saturdays. This is temporary till about mid-November. So if you're like, what the heck is this? Hope you come along for the ride, but this is just a temporary station change. And now back to the show with Russ Morrissey and his tabletop role-playing game, W.O.I.N. What's old is new.
If you played XCOM, you pretty much know how the combat system feels.
Okay.
It's not identical, but essentially you cover and position and height and your position with relation to your target is very important.
Okay.
So what happens is a combat tends to end up being slightly chess-like in that various characters are trying to move to get into advantageous positions, while other characters, the opponents, are also trying to do the same thing.
Right. Okay.
So you're trying to set up crossfires, or you're trying to get height advantages and things like that, and all these things add together to basically increase your chances of severely damaging your target. So it becomes very tactical in that sense.
So you're ultimately hoping to advance them on the on fire track.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, so from what I understand, now I know that I think it's Mike. Is it Meyer? Mike? Who's the guy that's
Myler?
doing now? Yeah, who's doing now. But for old and new, and for the core system, it had a designer of one, as in you, correct?
Correct.
Wow. So how long did that take you?
I would say, to write it initially, a few months. Then there was a good 18 months of playtesting. Loads of it. So if you count that, 2 years, really, for the entire thing. I'm not sure if the playtesting counts, does it? It's not writing so much.
Well, it's I would call that editing.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Either 6 months or 2 years, depending on what you want to count. If that playtesting, if I just published that initial playtest, I look at it now, it's horrifying. I might re-release the initial playtest document one day just as a nostalgic look at how it started.
If you would have released it as is, your game designer career might have gone up one level on fire track.
Yeah, most it would have gone all the way to the end of the track.
And you would have burned through all your luck.
Self-immolation, I think.
Yeah, you would have burned through all your luck. You would have gone all the way up and then start going into your hit points. Okay, so the books look great. You got good art design and layout and all that. So I think that
Savage Mojo, I've got to give them props for that.
Yeah, it looks very good. So if anybody is wondering, I would say that the art design and the layout and all that is just as good as anything from the big boys that you're going to go pick up off the shelf
it's absolutely gorgeous. I really do. It's lovely.
Looks great. So now, speaking of all that, how can people get their greedy little hands on W.O.I.N?
Right now, their very best option is to go to RPG Now or DriveThruRPG, or you can go to WoinRPG.com and just follow the links and pick up the hardcover. Or you can grab the PDF of the hardcover for just $10, which is super, super cheap.
Yeah. It's
285 pages, full color, a full game in one hardcover, $10 in PDF, or I think it's about 40 in I can't remember offhand what it is in hardcover, but 40-ish in hardcover.
Nice. So, do you have any plans to try to get stuff into like friendly local game stores or Amazon or anything?
That is underway.
Oh, great. Okay.
We'll be appearing in hopefully we'll be appearing in your friendly local game store. It will certainly be appearing in some friendly local game stores. Right. And yes, it will be on Amazon and other places too.
Cool. Well, I will endeavor to. What I like to do is when we have role-playing, when we have conventions that have role-playing or role-playing events, I love D&D. Okay. But I always try to run something different, like Castles of Crusades or Numenera or something, just to expose. So I'll try to work some W.O.I.N in as well, because I was one of those kids that would buy new role-playing games, not knowing if I was ever actually going to play it, but I just wanted to read it and see how the rules and the art and all that stuff looked. So,
I still am. God, I've got so many games I've never played.
Yeah. Yeah, I just loved seeing how everything worked and the art and the setting and all that. So looking forward to kind of getting into W.O.I.N. I've already downloaded some of the free chapters and stuff, and I will pick up the official stuff soon. So that's how people go to RPG Now or et cetera, and then it's coming to other places in the future. But why? Okay, so why, with all the choices out there? And people maybe already having a beloved system, why would I go get W.O.I.N? Now I'm going to go get it because I think it's cool. But if you're talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about it, why should they check it out? Like, what's your pitch on it?
God, that's a hard question, isn't it?
Because it is the one game to rule them all.
I think right now, especially for new, which is the one that you can get at the moment, if you like the idea of a modern interpretation of what, say, Trek or Traveller or, say, Star Wars, Babylon 5, Battlestar, any of these wonderful TV shows that you may have enjoyed over the years, if you like a modern, slick interpretation of those shows with enough flexibility to run any of them, I think that, and you enjoy tactical combat in the form of, say, XCOM, I think it would be the perfect pick for you.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that I think telling people you got a tabletop role-playing game with tactical XCOM-like combat that you can play either 80s action or fantasy or sci-fi, that's pretty cool. I think that's distinctive right there. Yeah. So, okay, well, cool. So since you've released the game, I know obviously you had a certain built-in community because you kickstarted it.
Yeah.
But since outside of the Kickstarter, how do you feel that the response has been?
It is so well. I wasn't expecting it to do as well so far, and bear in mind it's only been out 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
I wasn't expecting it to do so far as anywhere near as well as it actually has done. It's been at the top of the charts on GTRPG and RPG Now.
Nice.
It's got great 5-star reviews. It's doing so well. A small community of people. You know, the very best thing for me, and I suspect that many game designers share this, is when people start talking about your game, asking you questions about the rules, creating their own content and stuff like that. It's just such a wonderful, really, really nice feeling. And that's starting to happen, which is really gratifying to see. It's doing so well. I'm so pleased. And not only that, we've also got some wonderful plans. We've got a great license, which we've secured, which is going to be powered by W.O.I.N, which I can't quite tell you what it is quite yet, but it's all signed, sealed, and delivered.
Can you give us an incredibly vague hint of a possible genre?
It is for new.
Okay, so any other thoughts that you'd like to share on W.O.I.N or Ian World or anything as we wrap?
Nothing other than encouraging listeners to hop on over to DTRPG or RPG Now and pick up new. I'm sure for a minimal outlay of $10, they won't be disappointed.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to getting my eager hands on it. I really appreciate you for your time. I think what you do with Ian World, not only is it entertaining and informative, but I think you do a service to the the communities and industries, especially smaller, like the role-playing game community, depend on that kind of service being there. So, I think you do a great thing. Appreciate, your time. I'm looking forward to checking out W.O.I.N in all of its dice pool glory. So, all right. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time. Really enjoyed talking with you.
So. I wish it hadn't taken us so long to do this.
Yeah. Well, it's, life, you're busy. I'm busy. Everybody's busy. So, it's not like you didn't just launch a new game or anything. So, So, all right. Well, thanks.
I would be more than happy to come on again anytime you want. I really enjoyed it.
Great fun. We'll do it. What I'd like to do, and it doesn't have to be that long, but I'd like to do maybe a pre or post Innies show if we were able to work something like that out, and dedicate an entire show to the Innies. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, sure.
But but it doesn't have to be that. I mean, if you have anything you want to talk about or promote, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'd definitely love to have you on again. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, that was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Russ, and I will talk to you soon. And I hope that that W.O.I.N continues to exceed your expectations.
Oh, I hope so. I'm so happy with it.
Okay. And that's it for this week's episode of Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for listening as we talked with Russ Morrissey of Ian World fame about his new tabletop role-playing game system, W.O.I.N. What's old is new. Tune in next week for more geeky goodness right here on Shane Plays. Thanks so much for listening and have a great week.
All this has happened before and will happen again. 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 Again.
What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's new, pussycat? Whoa, 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 whoa.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.